Better? Okay, how about online? Can people online hear me? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. So I'd like you to take your fist, put it out for a minute, and then put your thumb out and see if you can hide my face with your fist. Can you do it? All right, you put it down. I don't want to see your faces. Kind of amazing, isn't it? I'm like 20 feet away from you, and that's enough that the little half inch of your thumb can hide my face. What I want to talk to you about today is the ways in which other people can make us feel small and about how we can shift that perspective. As many of you know, I like to teach through story. And today I'm actually going to offer 3 stories from very different times and very different situations, but all of them share a human piece in common. The first story I'm going to use is this week's Haftarah reading. So I'm going to ask you to take out the Eitz Chaim book again and turn to page 813 again. You just heard it read. And we're actually going to read through most of that story together in English. So just for background, in order to understand what I'm about to take us through, in ancient Israel, there was a custom for people who were very, very into being religious, that they could, if they wanted, take an oath to become what was called a Nazirite. And if you took that oath, then you could not drink any alcohol or cut your hair, usually for a particular period of time. Interestingly, the Hebrew word Nazir, Nazirite, in modern Hebrew is the word that's used for a Catholic monk. Modern Judaism has neither monks nor Nazirites, so this is something from the biblical past, but it features very strongly in this story. So I'm going to start reading in the beginning, where there's a big 13. There was a certain man named Zorah of the stock of Dan. There was a certain man from Zorah of the stock of Dan, whose name was Manoach. His wife was barren and had borne no children. So stop here for a moment and think about context. In the ancient world, women had no access to any kind of profession or career, or really any kind of self-fulfillment beyond motherhood, which is, of course, incredibly fulfilling if that's what one chooses. But in that world, either a woman had children or really she had nothing. So being barren for a woman in that time was devastating. An angel of Adonai appeared to the woman and said to her, "You are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now be careful not to drink wine or other intoxicant or to eat anything impure, for you are going to conceive and bear a son. Let no razor touch his head, for the boy is to be a Nazirite to God from the womb. He shall be the first to deliver Israel from the Philistines." So this is quite unusual, because usually to become a Nazirite, an adult takes an oath for a period of time, but this angel appears to this woman and tells her, you are going to make your child a Nazirite from birth, not even from birth, but even from before birth, during pregnancy, no alcohol. The woman went and told her husband, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God, very frightening. I did not ask him where he was from, nor did he tell me his name. He said to me, you are going to conceive and bear a son. Drink no wine or other intoxicant, eat nothing impure, for the boy is to be a Nazirite to God from the womb to the day of his death." Manoach pleaded with Adonai. "Oh, my Lord," he said, "please let the man of God that you sent come to us again, and let him instruct us how to act with the child that is to be born." Look what's going on here. Manoach doesn't trust what his wife is telling him. I got to hear it directly from the big man, right? I'm not taking it from this woman. God heeded Manoach's plea, and the angel of, wait for it, next page, the angel of God came to the woman again. She was sitting in the field, and her husband Manoach was not with her. And now, just for the sake of time, I'll tell you what happens. So she runs, she gets Manoach, she brings him back. The angel waited for them and repeats exactly what he had just told his wife, what he had just told Manoach's wife. And Manoach is kind of excited and wants to invite the man to sit down and drink. The angel looks like a man, and the angel says, no, 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 I can't eat or drink. Instead, give a sacrifice to God. And now I'm going to pick up in the middle paragraph where you see a big dash. For Manoach did not know that he was an angel of Adonai. Now think about that for a moment. His wife knew. His wife told him he was an angel of God. But no, Manoach wasn't picking up on it. So now they make the sacrifice, and a huge burst of flame, and the angel goes straight up to heaven amidst the flame, and suddenly Manoach wakes up, and we're at the bottom of the page, the last big dash on the page, 4 lines from the bottom. Manoach then realized it had been an angel of Adonai. And Manoach said to his wife, we shall surely die, for we have seen a divine being. Next page. But his wife said to him, had Adonai meant to take our lives, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and grain offering from us, nor let us see all of these things, and he would not have made such an announcement to us. So notice Manoach, who wouldn't trust his wife, had to hear the word directly from the angel. He's the one who's terrified. She is totally calm. The woman bore a son, and she named him Samson. The boy grew up, and Adonai blessed him. We'll come back to this story in a moment, but I just want you to notice the way Manoach was not trusting his wife, couldn't listen, had to hear it directly from the angel. The angel was going directly to the woman. Let's hold that story for a moment. Now we're going to go to a completely different story. And I will say the reason this story is on my mind is because I happen to be reading a book that included it, but also it's about a scientist, and Sarah and I have a shared fondness of science. We're jumping 3,000 years to the end of the 19th century. It's about a man named Lord Henry Cavendish. So I'm curious, has anyone in the room heard of Henry Cavendish? I know my mother-in-law has, because my husband's grandparents studied at the Cavendish Institute, which is a physics lab at the University of Cambridge. So big lab is named after him. It's interesting, actually. Most people have not heard of Cavendish, although he was one of possibly the most brilliant scientists of all time. Meticulous, ingenious, accomplished, and not all that famous. What he's best known for is discovering hydrogen gas. But now this was before anyone had heard of hydrogen. It was before we had a periodic table. And Cavendish figured out a way to separate what we now know as hydrogen from the other components of air. So that's mostly nitrogen and oxygen and water. And because oxygen is flammable and hydrogen is not, he called this new substance that he had separated out inflammable air. And then he used electricity. He figured out how to use electricity to put his inflammable air, that's hydrogen, together with oxygen, and voila, out comes water. And so he figured out what are the components of water, H2O, right? So that's his most famous result, but he actually had a number of other important results that are quite famous, and scores of other crucially important results, and actually a wide range of fields, many of which he never published and never got credit for in his lifetime. He was totally obsessed with his experiments. He took super, super careful notes of every detail. Good scientists need to take good notes. And he shared his notes freely with anyone who was interested, but he rarely published. Maybe because he really didn't care about getting credit, but also definitely because he was quite worried that his results were never quite perfect enough to be published. Turns out that Cavendish had severe social anxiety. He lived in a big house in the middle of London, which he converted into a private laboratory. That's where he did all of his work, and his neighbors thought he was this kind of wizard. He almost never left the house, except once a day at precisely the same time every evening. He took precisely the same walking route. He would walk at dusk in the middle of the road to avoid being seen or to avoid meeting any other human beings. He was wealthy and he had servants living with him. He avoided them too. When he needed to communicate with them, he would leave notes on a table. One time, a maid accidentally ran into him in the stairwell. He was so upset by the chance encounter, he immediately ordered a second set of steps constructed so he could avoid all contact. Many of his fellow scientists did not take well to this. One of his colleagues called him, quote, the coldest, most indifferent of mortals. Many thought he was arrogant, selfish. In truth, he was neither. He was just very, very uncomfortable being around other people. And that meant people didn't get a chance to understand him, especially in the 19th century, when people were a lot less tolerant of all kinds of diversity. But I have to say, even today, someone like Cavendish would be terribly vulnerable to bullying and victimization. His story could have been tragic if he hadn't been independently wealthy. But as it was, he could hire servants to take care of him. He could fund his own experiments. He rarely had to interact with people in ways that caused him anxiety. It didn't matter to him that people talked behind his back. He had his experiments. He had a few devoted students who were very, very happy to work with him. He had a huge impact that he actually didn't need to see, and that was all he needed to be happy. My third story, it's about us, the Jews. We have a long history of other people trying to make us feel small. From the time we were banished from our land by the Romans in 70, the Common Era, we lived as outsiders scattered around the world, belittled and often brutalized because we were different. Our oppressors tried to make us victims. We refused. We were expelled from country after country, routinely butchered by angry mobs, forced to wear identifying clothing so we could be easily singled out, and shamed. Through it all, we were not shamed. We remained proud to be Jewish, proud to be different, proud of our beautiful culture. If we had let them make us feel small, Judaism would not have survived to today, and we would not be here to celebrate Sarah's bat mitzvah. Now, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have said that all of that was in the past. Yeah, every now and then you'd hear of some anti-Semitic incident, but most of us felt pretty comfortable being Jewish in America. The shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018 was a shock to most of us. And several other violent attacks that in the years that followed. Now we all felt we needed security guards outside every Jewish building. We have 2 security guards there every Shabbat. But even with all of that, public gatherings of Jews have felt a little scary since then. But we did not feel small. We certainly did not feel ashamed. Since October 7th, 2023, the atmosphere has changed. Last year, a young man who I had mentored told me that when he meets people for the first time, he tries not to introduce himself with his last name. Why? His last name sounds too Jewish. Another young man, college student, told me that his doormate nicknamed him IDF boy. Not Israeli, never served, but he too has a very Jewish-sounding last name. At services last night, one of our members, Linda Rosen, told me that last week, her grandson, who's in Los Angeles, had stepped out of his apartment to wait for guests that were coming for Shabbat dinner. He was wearing his kippah very visibly. He was holding his 4-year-old daughter by the hand, and a guy drove by and shouted out the window, "Get out of here, you obscenity Jews!" And as we all know, within 2 weeks, there have been 2 very violent attacks. First, Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky, peace activists who happened to work at the Israeli embassy, were shot dead by a man shouting, "Free Palestine." And then in Boulder, Colorado, another terrorist through Molotov cocktails, burning 15 people, as Rabbi Ezra shared, at a Run for Their Lives rally. It is not hard to draw a line from the casual bullying in a college dorm to shouting obscenities at a stranger in the streets to explosives and bullets. These are escalations of a pattern of trying to shame us for being Jewish. They want us to hide and feel small. They want us to be afraid. Do you know what Linda Rosen's grandson told her? He said, "I'm not going to let them get to me." The next Shabbat, he was out there again wearing his kippah. So I'll close by taking us back to this week's Haftarah about the woman who was visited by an angel. Her husband's name was Manoach. What was her name? That's right, we don't know. Mrs., exactly. She is just called the wife of Manoach. And it's possible she preferred it that way, in which case, God bless the author for respecting that. Like Cavendish, some people are private and don't want their names or their faces up in the public arena. God bless them. But I think something else is going on here, because very few women are named in the Bible. I think the text intentionally withholds their names as a critique of the sexism of their time. As a woman, she was so unimportant, her name was completely obscured by her husband's, just like my face can be obscured by your thumbs. But who was the really small one in that story? It was Manoach, who was distrusting and scared. She was not afraid at all, nor should we be. Don't let anyone ever make you feel small. Be proud of who you are and create space for others who are different from you in all kinds of ways to be proud too. Shabbat Shalom. And I just want to say one word to Sarah, well, a few words. Sarah, I hope you feel proud of yourself today, because I am very proud of you. You did so well. And I want everyone to know what an absolute joy it was studying Torah with Sarah. She understands it with a kind of depth so quickly. She writes so beautifully. It feels like almost effortless the way she makes these complex ideas incredibly clear. She has the Hebrew down of these prayers superbly. And getting up in front of a crowd and performing in Hebrew, that was hard for you. You weren't sure if you could do it, and you did. You learned today that you are capable of doing things that you never thought you could manage. So I want you to hold on to that feeling, Sarah. You are capable of so much. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. And I have to say, I do not say this to everyone, because it is not always true, but you can do anything you want. Mazel tov. I'm going to take Sarah next door. We have another service going on, and we want the people in that service to get a chance to wish her Mazel Tov. And in here we'll be turning to the final phase of our Shabbat morning prayer services. It's called the Musaf, and it begins on page 185.
And the Chatzi Kaddish before is 184.
184.
Here's all Sarah.